The forest around Ashworth Hall was quiet on the morning Elena Voss arrived, but the silence did not feel peaceful. It felt like the whole pack was holding its breath, waiting to see what kind of woman had come to marry their king. Cain Ashworth stood at the top of the stone steps, arms folded, his expression as still as the gray sky above him. He was the Alpha King of the Northern Packs, a title he had carried alone since his parents died 3 years earlier, in a border skirmish that still haunted the older wolves who remembered it. He had not asked for a wife. He had not asked for any of this. But when his council warned him that the fragile truce with the Eastern Pack was breaking apart, and that only a marriage between the two bloodlines could hold it together, he had agreed without argument. Duty had never been something he questioned. It was simply what he did. The car carrying Elena stopped at the base of the steps, and when she stepped out, Cain felt nothing he had expected to feel. No triumph at securing peace, no relief. Just a strange, quiet awareness of the woman walking toward him, with her chin lifted and her hands folded carefully in front of her, as if she were bracing herself for something unpleasant. She was not what the rumors had described. He had heard she was cold, distant, difficult. Instead, he saw someone who looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the long drive north. "Alpha Ashworth," she said, offering a small, correct bow of her head. "Miss Voss," he replied, just as formally. "Welcome to Ashworth Hall." That was all. No warmth, no comfort, just two strangers agreeing to a transaction neither of them had chosen. Elena had expected exactly this. Her whole life, she had been useful to her pack rather than wanted by it. Her father, the beta of the Eastern Pack, had raised her to be capable, quiet, and obedient, because a daughter who caused no trouble was a daughter who could be married off easily when the time came. She had accepted long ago that love was not something written into her future. She would marry a king who saw her as a peace treaty with a heartbeat, and she would learn to live with that. The wedding was set for the next full moon, 4 weeks away. In that time, Elena was expected to learn the customs of the Northern Pack, meet its senior wolves, and prepare herself to become their queen. Cain, for his part, kept his distance. He greeted her politely at meals. He answered her questions about pack law with brief, practical explanations. Beyond that, he gave her nothing. It was not cruelty. It was self-protection, though Cain would never have described it that way, even to himself. He had learned after his parents died that caring deeply about people only meant more ways to be hurt. Ruling a pack required a clear head, not a soft heart. Elena was his future queen, and he intended to treat her with respect, but he would not let himself feel anything more than that. His resolve began to crack sooner than he expected. It happened first in the training yard, where a group of pups had gathered to watch the older wolves practice their forms. One small pup, barely old enough to shift, wandered too close to the sparring circle and was knocked over by accident. He was not hurt, but he was frightened, and he began to cry in that helpless way young pups do, too overwhelmed to explain what was wrong. The nearby adults hesitated, unsure how to calm a child who was not their own. Elena did not hesitate. She crossed the yard, knelt in the dirt in her fine traveling dress, and gathered the pup into her arms. She spoke to him softly, told him he was safe, that everyone gets knocked down sometimes, that it did not mean anything was wrong with him. Within minutes, the pup had stopped crying and was giggling at something she whispered in his ear. Cain watched from the shadow of the training hall, and something shifted in his chest that he did not have a name for yet. It happened again 2 days later, when Elena stood up to Garin, one of the pack's oldest and most opinionated elders. Garin had made a sharp comment about Eastern wolves being weak-blooded, clearly testing her, expecting her to shrink back the way a properly obedient bride was supposed to. Instead, Elena met his eyes without flinching and reminded him, calmly and precisely, that her bloodline had held the eastern border for 200 years without losing a single battle. Garin blinked, muttered something under his breath, and did not bring it up again. Cain had not been in the room. He heard about it from 3 different people by the end of the day, each of them clearly impressed, though trying not to show it. And then there was the night he found her in the healer's wing, long after most of the hall had gone quiet, sitting beside an injured guard who had taken a bad fall during patrol. No one had asked her to be there, She was simply holding a cloth to his forehead and talking to him gently while the healer worked, because she had noticed he was frightened and alone. Kane stood in the doorway for a long moment before she noticed him. When she finally looked up, she seemed almost embarrassed, as if she had been caught doing something wrong rather than something kind. He didn't want to be by himself, she said simply, as though that explained everything. It did explain everything, Kane realized. It explained exactly the kind of person she was. After that night, he began finding reasons to be near her. He told himself he was reviewing wedding preparations that did not actually need reviewing. He told himself he was walking patrol routes that happened to pass beneath her window. He told himself, again and again, that this was vigilance, nothing more, simply a king making sure his future queen was settling in properly. He was lying to himself, and some quiet, honest part of him knew it. Elena noticed the change too, though she was careful not to hope for too much. She had learned not to trust small kindnesses, because in her experience, they rarely lasted. But she noticed the way Kane's voice softened slightly when he spoke to her now. She noticed that he had started remembering small details about her, like the fact that she took her tea without sugar, or that she preferred the garden path over the main hallway because it was quieter. She told herself these things did not mean anything. She told herself that even if they did, it would be foolish to let herself care. The real turning point came 2 weeks before the wedding, at a diplomatic dinner meant to celebrate the coming alliance between the two packs. Representatives from both sides gathered in the Great Hall, and for the first time since her arrival, Elena allowed herself to relax slightly, laughing quietly at something one of the Eastern delegates said. It happened fast. A servant Elena did not recognize approached the table with a tray of wine, and something about the way he moved caught Kane's attention, a half-second before it caught anyone else's. His wolf reacted before his mind fully understood why. He was across the room and between Elena and the servant before the man could reach her, his body a wall of muscle and instinct, his growl low and dangerous enough that the entire hall fell silent. The man broke and ran rather than fight. He was caught before he reached the doors, and what they found hidden in his coat left no doubt about what he had intended. Someone within the Eastern delegation, someone who did not want the treaty to succeed, had sent him to make certain the wedding never happened. Elena was shaking, though she tried to hide it. Kane turned to her immediately, hands finding her shoulders, checking her over as though he could not quite believe she was unharmed. And in that moment, with her pulse still racing, and his wolf still simmering just beneath the surface, something settled into place between them, ancient and undeniable. A mate bond, dormant until that exact instant, snapped fully awake. Kane felt it like a physical thing, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with fear or anger, and everything to do with the woman standing in front of him. He recognized it immediately for what it was, because every wolf did, the moment it happened. This had never been only about duty. It had never truly been only that, even from the beginning. Elena felt it too, though she was slower to trust it. She had built careful walls around her heart for a reason, and one dangerous moment of fear was not enough to knock them down completely. That night, Kane went to find her. She was in the garden, wrapped in a shawl against the cold, staring up at the moon that would witness their wedding in less than 2 weeks. She heard him approach, but did not turn around right away. "You don't have to check on me," she said quietly. "I'm fine." "I'm not here to check on you," Kane said. "I'm here because I need to tell you something, and I should have told you weeks ago." She turned then, and something in his face made her stay silent, waiting. "I agreed to marry you because it was necessary," he said, "because our pack needed peace, and I believe that was the only reason it mattered. I want you to know that. I never meant to feel anything more than obligation toward you." Elena's expression closed slightly, bracing for the rest. "But somewhere in these past few weeks," Kane continued, "obligation turned into something else. I don't have a simple word for it. I just know that when I saw that man near you tonight, it wasn't duty that moved me. It wasn't politics. It was you. It has been you for longer than I let myself admit." Elena stood very still, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear this time. Part of her wanted desperately to believe him, but a lifetime of being valued for her usefulness rather than herself had taught her caution. How do I know this isn't just the bond talking? She asked softly. Wolves feel pulled toward their mates. That doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean you actually see me. It was a fair question, and Cain did not try to argue with it. Instead, he simply said, "Then let me show you, instead of telling you. Give me until the wedding. If by then you still believe this is only the bond, I will release you from it, and you can choose whatever life you want, free of any of this." It was, Elena realized, the most honest thing anyone had ever offered her. In the days that followed, Cain kept his word in ways that had nothing to do with grand gestures. He asked about her father, and listened, really listened, when she spoke about the parts of her childhood that had been lonely. He learned the names of the pups she had grown fond of, and made time to visit them with her. He stopped treating her like a diplomatic partner, and started treating her like a person whose opinions mattered to him, whose comfort mattered to him, whose happiness, quietly and steadily, became something he seemed to care about more than the treaty itself. Elena found her guarded heart softening despite her best efforts to protect it. She began to trust the warmth in his voice when he said her name. She began to believe that this bond, however it had begun, had grown into something real on its own. On the morning of the wedding, the great hall was filled with wolves from both packs, many of them still wary of one another, despite the alliance they had come to celebrate. The formal vows had been written weeks earlier by Cain's council, careful diplomatic words meant to satisfy both sides without offending either. Cain did not read them. When the moment came, he set the prepared paper aside, looked directly at Elena, and spoke instead from memory, his voice steady and clear enough for the entire hall to hear. He told her that he had walked into this marriage believing it was only ever going to be about duty. He told her about the pup she had comforted in the training yard, and the elders she had silenced without raising her voice, and the injured guard she had sat beside, simply because she could not stand the thought of him being alone. He told her the exact moment he had known his heart no longer belonged only to his crown, but to her. He said it all without shame, in front of both packs, choosing her honestly, rather than reciting words someone else had written for him. The hall was utterly silent by the time he finished. And then Elena, tears slipping freely down her face for the first time since she had arrived at Ashworth Hall, finished the vows in words of her own. She spoke of a girl who had never expected to be chosen for herself, only for what she could offer others, and of a king who had somehow, without either of them planning it, made her believe she was worth choosing after all. When they sealed the bond before both packs, it was not simply a political alliance being confirmed. It was two wolves who had found each other honestly, despite every reason not to, standing together as mates, rather than strangers bound by obligation. The treaty between the northern and eastern packs held, stronger than anyone had expected, because it was no longer built only on necessity. It was built on the quiet, steady kind of love that grows in small moments nobody plans for, until suddenly, it is the only thing that matters at all. Cain had married her for duty, exactly as everyone expected, but long before the wedding was over, duty had quietly become love, and neither of them wanted it any other way.